A terminally ill millionaire gathers his relatives at his mansion to stay with him during his final days. He will leave his entire fortune to just one person to manage. What they didn't know was that they were being watched the whole time. Does anyone really care about him enough to inherit his entire fortune? Thomas Caldwell sat alone in his vast study, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the mahogany-paneled walls lined with books that smelled of leather and time. His gaze wandered out the towering windows overlooking the sprawling Caldwell estate. Acres of lush greenery bordered by the wild, untamed forest that marked the limits of his dominion. The estate, a grand mansion built during America's Gilded Age, stood as a monument to old money and generations of strategic, if sometimes ruthless, family maneuvering. Today, however, the opulence of his surroundings did little to ease the weight of loneliness that seemed to press upon him with the years. At 75, Thomas was a man who had everything, yet he felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. His life, filled with financial triumphs and corporate battles, lacked the one thing money couldn't buy: genuine human connection. No wife, no children, just a string of relatives who were more interested in his wealth than his well-being. With a deep sigh, he turned back to the mahogany desk and picked up a stack of cream-colored envelopes. Each was addressed in elegant script to a different member of his extended family. It was time to bring them together, not for a celebration of familial bonds, but for a test to see if among them there was one worthy of his legacy. As he sealed the last envelope, his mind replayed the lawyer's words from earlier that week. "Are you sure you want to go through with this, Thomas? It's quite unorthodox." Yes, he was sure. This would be his final game, his last grand maneuver. Tomorrow, the invitations would be sent out, summoning his relatives to the Caldwell estate for what they would believe might be their last chance to see him alive. One by one, luxury cars rolled down the long, winding driveway lined with ancient oaks, each vehicle kicking up a cloud of dust that shimmered in the slanting rays of the afternoon sun. The first to arrive was Elizabeth Caldwell, Thomas's niece, a sharp-witted lawyer from New York, always dressed impeccably in designer suits. Her eyes, much like Thomas's, missed little, observing the estate with a calculating gaze as she stepped out of her silver Mercedes. Following closely was the Green family, Thomas's sister's children and their families. They came in a more chaotic convoy, filled with the sounds of teenagers arguing over gadgets and toddlers fussing. The adults, Peter and Susan Green, appeared weary but managed polite smiles as they herded their offspring towards the mansion. As more relatives arrived, the mansion buzzed with the energy of a long-due family reunion. There were warm embraces and laughter on the surface, but underneath, a current of tension and unspoken questions flowed. Many had not visited the estate in years, only keeping in touch through cold texts and obligatory holiday cards. Now, with the news of Thomas's failing health, they gathered under one roof, each harboring their own hopes and apprehensions. Thomas watched from the upper floor window, his expression unreadable. He noted who arrived with genuine concern and who wore a mask of feigned affection. The scene below was a chessboard, and the pieces were just beginning to move. The house staff, well versed in the ways of discreet observation, shared quick glances. They were the silent keepers of secrets, well aware of the undercurrents swirling around the family. Mrs. Hughes, the stern-faced housekeeper, directed the younger maids to take the guests' luggage to their respective rooms, each placement calculated to encourage or discourage certain interactions. As evening approached and the last of the daylight receded, the grand dining hall became the gathering point. A long table was set with gleaming silver and crystal, the chandelier above casting a soft glow over the assembled family. It was here that Thomas planned to drop the veil and lay out the true purpose of this gathering. The dining hall buzzed with polite conversation as the Caldwell relatives settled into their seats, the fine china and crystal glasses reflecting the soft light from the chandeliers above. A sumptuous dinner was served, a testament to the estate's ability to host grand affairs, with course after course of exquisite dishes that were as much a feast for the eyes as for the palate. Thomas Caldwell, seated at the head of the table, watched his relatives with an impassive gaze. He raised his glass, signaling for silence, and the chatter gradually died down, all eyes turning towards him. "Ladies and gentlemen, family," Thomas began, his voice steady and commanding. "Thank you all for joining me on such short notice. As you may have heard, my health has taken a turn for the worse. The doctors are quite grim about my prognosis." Murmurs of concern and barely masked curiosity rippled through the room. Yes, it's as bad as they say, but tonight is not about mourning what's to come, but rather ensuring the future of the Caldwell legacy. He paused, letting his words sink in. "I have decided," he continued, "that the time has come to choose my successor. Over the next few days, you will all be given a series of, let's call them tasks. These will determine who among you is best suited to inherit not just my wealth, but the responsibility that comes with it." A stunned silence followed. This was not a mere gathering, it was a competition, a test of wits, morals, and ambition. "Tomorrow morning," Thomas added, "you will receive your first challenge. Enjoy your evening, everyone." As he concluded, Thomas smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. He had laid the gauntlet down, and now it was up to his family to decide how far they were willing to go for the Caldwell fortune. After the announcement, the atmosphere in the dining hall shifted palpably. Dinner concluded with dessert served amid strained smiles and polite nods, as the relatives processed the implications of Thomas's words. One by one, they excused themselves, drifting towards the various drawing rooms of the mansion to digest not only their meals, but also the night's revelations. In the dimly lit corners of the Grand Library, Elizabeth Caldwell huddled in whispered conversation with her cousin Michael Green, the two of them plotting potential strategies. "He's testing us, Michael," Elizabeth murmured, her eyes alight with a mix of excitement and caution. "Whatever these tasks are, they're not just about capability. He's looking for loyalty, for cunning." Michael nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to stick together, form a pact. It's the only way one of us can come out on top. Divide and conquer," he suggested, his voice low. Elsewhere, in the lush conservatory, Susan Green sat with her sister-in-law, Laura, who was more distressed by the news. "I don't like this, Susan," Laura confessed, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. "It feels like we're in one of his corporate games, but this time it's our lives he's playing with." Susan, ever the pragmatist, patted Laura's hand reassuringly. "It's just like any negotiation, Laura. We assess our position, understand the stakes, and make the best move. Thomas is a businessman. He respects that." As the night deepened, secrets began to spill softly against the backdrop of rustling leaves outside. Allegiances were formed in hushed tones, while others, feeling isolated or overwhelmed, retreated to their rooms to ponder their next steps alone. The mansion, a character in its own right, seemed to watch over these nocturnal machinations with an air of ancient knowing. It had seen many such gatherings, many secrets whispered beneath its roofs, and it stood silently, the keeper of the Caldwell legacy. The game had begun, and while the players each harbored their strategies, they were all acutely aware that in the world of the Caldwells, trust was as fragile as the crystal glasses from which they drank. The morning after the announcement, the Caldwell estate awoke to an air of cautious anticipation. Breakfast was a quieter affair than the previous night's dinner, with each family member absorbed in their thoughts, occasionally exchanging meaningful glances or whispers. As they finished, the house staff distributed small, sealed envelopes to each relative. Inside each was a simple yet provocative challenge penned by Thomas. The note read, "To whom much is given, much is expected. Today's task involves charity. You will each be given $10,000 to donate to a cause of your choice. However, the decision must not only be generous, but also thoughtful. This evening, you will explain your choice and what it reveals about your approach to the Caldwell legacy." Elizabeth Caldwell chose to support a legal aid society that provided free services to underprivileged families, reflecting her belief in justice and equality. In contrast, Michael Green opted for an environmental non-profit, aiming to showcase his commitment to sustainability and forward-thinking, traits he believed were essential for leading a modern enterprise. Throughout the day, the relatives dispersed across the estate and into town, some researching their options online, others making calls, and a few taking personal trips to local charities to see the impact firsthand. As the sun began to set, they reconvened in the library, where Thomas had arranged for a casual reception. One by one, they presented their choices, explaining the rationale behind their decisions. Thomas listened, nodding occasionally, his expression giving nothing away. It was clear that this test was as much about the why as it was about the what. While the relatives believed their deliberations to be private, Thomas had not left anything to chance. Hidden cameras and microphones captured every discussion, every phone call, every seemingly private moment. In his private study, Thomas and his trusted advisor, Mr. Harwood, reviewed the footage and audio, analyzing the sincerity and strategy behind each relative's actions. "Look at how Elizabeth interacts with the staff at the Legal Aid Society," Thomas pointed out, observing her warm, genuine demeanor. "She's not just performing for the inheritance. She truly cares." In contrast, footage of Peter Green showed him negotiating how his donation could be publicized, focusing more on the potential PR benefits than the charitable impact. "He sees everything as a transaction," Thomas remarked, disappointment evident in his tone. That evening, as the relatives gathered to share their experiences, Thomas's perspective was colored by what he had observed behind the scenes. Each presentation was met with polite applause, but the true judgments were being made far from the public eye. The day concluded with mixed feelings among the family. Some were confident in their choices, while others were uneasy, wondering if they had done enough to impress Thomas. The atmosphere was tinged with a new awareness that their every move might be scrutinized far more closely than they realized. The hidden surveillance added a layer of complexity to the competition, raising questions about privacy and trust. As the relatives retired for the night, the estate buzzed with a silent tension, the air thick with unsaid thoughts and suspicions. Late into the night, Thomas Caldwell found himself pacing in his expansive study, the weight of his surveillance insights pressing heavily on him. The portraits of his ancestors looked down from the walls, their faces stern and expectant, as if urging him to make a wise choice. But as the test unfolded, Thomas felt a growing unease about the path he had chosen to determine his successor. He paused by the fireplace, reflecting on the day's events. Elizabeth's genuine engagement with the Legal Aid Society and Michael's calculated approach to environmental philanthropy showcased their differing perspectives on legacy and responsibility. Yet, watching their every move through cameras felt increasingly invasive, almost distasteful. Am I really learning anything about their true selves, or just how well they perform under constant watch? Thomas mused aloud. Mr. Harwood, ever present and observant, offered a balanced view. It's revealing, isn't it? Not just what they choose to show, but what they believe they need to hide. This conversation sparked a pivotal moment for Thomas. The realization that his methods might be sowing distrust and discomfort among those he considered family led him to question not only their characters, but his own motives. Was his legacy merely a treasure to be won, or did it carry a deeper responsibility he had neglected? As dawn approached, Thomas made a decision. He would continue with the tests, but with a renewed focus on understanding his relatives' motivations and fears, rather than just their strategies and pretenses. This shift marked a significant turn in his approach, setting the stage for a more profound engagement with what it truly means to be a Caldwell. The next morning, amid the usual bustle of breakfast preparations and the subdued chatter of the family, Thomas received a handwritten letter, delivered to his study by an anonymous servant. The elegant script was unfamiliar, and the message inside was both unsettling and intriguing. Dear Mr. Caldwell, it seems your game has deeper layers than even you might suspect. Not all is as it seems, and not all players are at the table. Be wary of the unseen hands that move the pieces. Thomas read and reread the letter, each word sending a ripple of unease through him. Who among his guests was aware of the true nature of his test? And more importantly, who else was playing a game of their own within his walls? Determined to uncover this hidden adversary, Thomas instructed Mr. Harwood to tighten security around the estate and to begin a discreet investigation into the origins of the letter. This mystery added a new dimension to the already complex dynamics of the family gathering, injecting a sense of urgency and paranoia. As the relatives gathered for the day's activities, unaware of the letter, Thomas watched them with a new scrutiny, trying to detect any signs of duplicity, but the letter also reminded him that perhaps he was not the only one with secrets, and the Caldwell legacy might attract threats beyond familial greed. This development set the stage for the next challenge, with Thomas now playing a dual role, the orchestrator of the test and a participant in a shadowy game of his own. The mansion, ever silent and watchful, held on to its secrets, the walls echoing with the whispers of past and present intrigues. As the day progressed, the atmosphere at Caldwell Estate grew increasingly tense. The family members, now accustomed to the morning's routine of receiving envelopes, found today's challenge to be particularly daunting. Inside each envelope was not a charitable task or business decision, but a direct ultimatum from Thomas. Trust is the foundation of any legacy, the note began. Today, I challenge each of you to reveal a secret you have kept from the family. Something significant that could affect perceptions. Tonight, at dinner, you will share these truths openly. Those who choose transparency will continue in the quest for my legacy. Those who do not will kindly be asked to leave the estate tomorrow. The task sent shockwaves through the family. Secrets were the currency of the Caldwells, guarded closely and used strategically. The prospect of airing them in such a public and potentially damaging forum was terrifying. Throughout the day, relatives were seen taking long walks on the estate's grounds, making private phone calls, or seeking counsel with those they trusted most. Elizabeth, who had been an open book regarding her professional life, struggled with the decision to reveal her recent battle with a serious illness, a vulnerability she feared could undermine her standing as a strong candidate. Michael, on the other hand, wrestled with disclosing a failed business venture that almost led to bankruptcy, a fact that might question his financial acumen. As evening approached, the dining room was thick with apprehension. Thomas, observing the strained faces of his relatives, questioned the severity of the challenge he had posed. Yet he remained firm, believing that this crucible, harsh though it might be, was necessary to reveal the depth of character, or lack thereof, in his potential heirs. Dinner that evening was a somber affair. The grand dining hall, usually filled with the clinks of cutlery and soft laughter, now resonated with a tense silence, broken intermittently by the somber clearing of throats or nervous sipping of water. One by one, The relatives stood to reveal their secrets. Elizabeth spoke first, her voice steady but softer than usual, as she disclosed her health struggles. Her honesty brought nods of sympathy from some, while others masked their surprise with careful neutrality. Michael revealed his financial misstep, explaining the circumstances and how he learned from them. His candor earned him respect from a few, but skeptical glances from others who valued financial infallibility. As the revelations continued, the air in the room grew heavier, laden with the weight of newly shared burdens and the re-evaluation of relationships. Some secrets were minor, almost trivial, but others exposed grievances and past betrayals that had festered beneath the surface for years. Thomas watched, his heart heavy with the impact of his demand. He had wanted to test their honesty, but at what cost? The fabric of the family felt more frayed than fortified by the evening's confessions. As the last secret was shared, Thomas stood, his voice resonant in the now still room. "Thank you for your courage tonight. I believe we have all seen aspects of our family we perhaps wish we hadn't, but I hope this transparency can be the first step towards a stronger, more genuine bond, no matter who becomes my successor." With that, the dinner concluded, and the relatives dispersed, some in quiet contemplation, others in whispered, urgent conversations. The estate settled into a restless silence, the night's revelations casting long shadows across the Caldwell legacy. As dawn broke over the Caldwell estate, the air was thick with the aftermath of last night's revelations. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the faces of the family members who gathered somewhat reluctantly for breakfast in the grand dining room. The usual pleasantries were exchanged, but the atmosphere was charged with a new awareness. Each member now carried the weight of the other's secrets. Elizabeth, feeling vulnerable yet somehow liberated after revealing her illness, sat quietly at one end of the table, sipping her tea and observing her relatives. Michael, now seen in a slightly different light, appeared more approachable, engaging in low, earnest conversations with cousins he had previously held at a professional distance. Thomas, observing silently, noted the subtle shifts in dynamics. He recognized that the disclosure of secrets had altered relationships, some strengthening and others clearly under strain. His challenge had indeed stirred the pot, but the true mettle of his potential heirs was yet to be tested. Today's challenge was strategically lighter, yet crucial for gauging adaptability and creativity. Each relative received an envelope with a single line: "Devise a plan to enhance the estate's profitability without compromising its heritage." This task was designed to see who could balance respect for legacy with the necessity of innovation, a key trait for the one who would inherit his empire. As the relatives dispersed to contemplate their strategies, Thomas retired to his study, his mind busy with plans for observing their approaches. The estate, with its vast lands, historic buildings, and various business ventures, offered a multitude of opportunities for enhancement, from ecotourism to luxury retreats and agricultural innovations. Michael teamed up with Elizabeth, proposing to convert one of the older barns into a venue for high-end corporate retreats, combining luxury with the rustic charm of the estate. They spent the morning scouting the location, discussing logistics, and drafting a preliminary business plan. Meanwhile, Susan Green, always keen on sustainability, suggested installing solar panels across the estate's rooftops to reduce energy costs and appeal to eco-conscious visitors. Her project included a detailed cost-benefit analysis and potential tax incentives, showcasing her meticulous attention to detail. Throughout the day, Thomas's trusted advisors discreetly monitored the relatives' activities, reporting back their findings. Thomas was particularly interested in not just the ideas themselves, but how each relative handled challenges and collaborated with others. This challenge was less about financial acumen and more about vision and leadership. By late afternoon, the family regrouped in the library, each prepared to pitch their proposal to Thomas and a small panel he had assembled, including his chief financial officer and the estate manager. The air buzzed with a competitive yet creative energy, each relative eager to impress not only with their ideas, but with their capacity to lead and innovate. As the pitches unfolded in the library, it became apparent that not all ideas were solely the products of their presenters. Behind the scenes, allegations began to surface about stolen concepts and underhanded tactics. Michael's proposal for the barn conversion, initially applauded for its innovation and thorough planning, came under scrutiny when another cousin, Jonathan, accused him of appropriating an idea they had discussed informally weeks before the challenge. The accusations sparked a heated debate among the family, causing rifts as sides were taken. Thomas observed quietly from his chair, disappointed yet intrigued by the unfolding drama. This conflict, while unfortunate, provided a clearer picture of how each family member handled confrontation and adversity. Elizabeth, caught in the middle, attempted to mediate, suggesting that collaboration might have been a better approach from the start. Her diplomatic stance enhanced her standing with some relatives, though it did little to quell Jonathan's sense of betrayal. Meanwhile, Susan's proposal for solar panels was met with skepticism from Peter, who questioned the feasibility and upfront costs. The tension escalated when emails were discovered that Peter had sent to external consultants, questioning Susan's calculations and motives. This chapter of accusations and counter-accusations revealed the deeper layers of competition among the Caldwells. Trust was fragile and the stakes were high, highlighting the complexities of family and business entwined. The day's tensions reached a peak when Laura, the youngest of the cousins, stumbled upon a series of emails while using the estate's main computer. These communications revealed not just Peter's behind-the-scenes skepticism, but also hinted at collusion with an external party interested in purchasing part of the estate's land, a fact he had kept hidden from the family. Shocked by her discovery, Laura brought the evidence to Elizabeth, who in turn confronted Peter in front of the family. The confrontation led to a broader discussion about the integrity and transparency required to lead the Caldwell legacy. Thomas, having been informed of the discovery, called for a private meeting with Peter. In a quiet, stern conversation, he expressed his deep disappointment and concern over Peter's actions, which not only threatened the family's cohesion, but also the estate's future. The revelations of the day served as a turning point in the challenge, forcing Thomas to reconsider not only the qualifications of his potential heirs, but also the ethical foundations upon which his legacy would be continued. With the family's trust shaken, Thomas realized that the next steps would need to be handled with great care. The challenge had indeed brought out the true characters of the Caldwell family, for better or for worse. The evening following the revelation of Peter's secretive dealings marked a significant shift in the dynamics within the Caldwell family. Dinner was a subdued affair, with conversations kept to polite inquiries and guarded replies. The underlying tension was palpable, and Thomas, ever the astute observer, noticed the shift in alliances and the increase in suspicion among his potential heirs. After dinner, Thomas convened a family meeting in the library, the room dimly lit by the soft glow of table lamps, giving it an almost conspiratorial atmosphere. "This family," Thomas began, his voice firm yet not unkind, "is at a crossroads. We can either allow deceit to tear us apart, or we can confront our issues head-on and strengthen our bonds." Elizabeth, taking the initiative, stood and addressed the group. "We are all here because we share a name and a legacy, but more importantly, we share blood. Yes, we've had our differences, and trust has been tested, but I believe we can work through this." Her call for unity was met with nods from some, though others, like Peter, remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Michael, seeing an opportunity to mend fences and restore some semblance of family unity, suggested regular family councils. If we are to run this estate together, or even share in its legacy, we need to communicate better. We need transparency and regular check-ins, he proposed. The meeting turned into a forum for airing grievances and proposing solutions. While not all conflicts were resolved, the act of confrontation led to a cathartic release of tension, paving the way for tentative reconciliations. The following morning brought an unexpected challenge that would test the newly forged resolutions of the Caldwell family. A significant section of the estate's main irrigation system failed, leading to a flood in one of the lower fields, a critical area that supported a small but vital part of the estate's agricultural operations. As the family rallied to address the emergency, their ability to work together was immediately put to the test. Elizabeth and Michael took charge, coordinating efforts between the estate staff and external contractors. Laura and Jonathan, despite their previous tensions, worked side by side, assessing the damage and salvaging what they could from the affected crops. Susan, applying her sustainability expertise, suggested long-term solutions to prevent future incidents, emphasizing the need for investment in more robust, eco-friendly infrastructure. Her proactive approach helped shift the focus from the immediate crisis to future prevention, illustrating her vision for the estate's sustainable development. Throughout the ordeal, Thomas watched from a distance, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and relief as he witnessed his family pulling together in the face of adversity. This unexpected crisis served not only as a test of their ability to cooperate, but also reinforced the importance of resilience and collective action in stewarding the Caldwell legacy. By the end of the day, the immediate crisis was contained, and plans for more permanent solutions were underway. The family gathered once again in the library, tired but united by the day's efforts. Thomas, feeling more hopeful about the future, addressed them. "Today, you have all shown that despite our differences, we can come together when it truly matters. This is what I hope for our future." As the estate slowly returned to normalcy following the irrigation crisis, whispers of another, more personal nature began to circulate among the Caldwell family. Late one evening, Elizabeth stumbled upon a series of old letters in the estate's attic, letters that hinted at long-buried family secrets involving the origins of some of the Caldwell wealth. These revelations suggested that not all of Thomas's business dealings had been entirely above board, a fact that could potentially tarnish the family's reputation if made public. Elizabeth, torn between protecting the family's name and her own integrity, decided to consult Michael. Together in the quiet confines of the library, they debated the implications of bringing these secrets to light. "It's not just about our past, it's about who we choose to be going forward," Elizabeth argued, emphasizing the need for transparency. Michael, wary of the potential fallout, suggested they approach Thomas directly before making any decisions. "He deserves to know what we've found, and perhaps he can provide some context that these letters lack," Michael proposed, always considering the familial ties that bound them. Their private consultation was interrupted by Laura, who had overheard part of their conversation. Curious and concerned, she pressed them for details. Faced with her insistence, Elizabeth and Michael shared their discovery, expanding the circle of secrecy and complicating their next steps. The discovery in the attic proved to be a turning point for the Caldwell family. As word of the old letters spread, alliances within the family began to shift. Some members pushed for full disclosure, believing that the family needed to confront and rectify its past, while others feared the damage such revelations could do, advocating for the letters to be destroyed. Amid these growing tensions, Thomas called for a family meeting. Unaware of the letter's existence, he intended to discuss plans for the estate's future, but was instead met with a family divided over an issue he hadn't seen coming. At the meeting, Elizabeth took the lead, presenting the letters to Thomas in front of the entire family. The room fell silent as he read, his face a mask of stoic composure. When he finally looked up, his eyes were not of a man defeated, but of one ready to address his past. "These letters, they are part of our history, but they do not define us. What matters is how we handle this truth," Thomas spoke, his voice steady. The discussion that followed was intense and emotional. Thomas admitted to some of the questionable decisions he had made in his youth, explaining the pressures and temptations he had faced. His candidness brought a new level of understanding among the family members, and slowly, the initial shock gave way to a nuanced discussion about the legacy they all shared. By the end of the meeting, a tentative agreement was reached to dig deeper into the historical aspects of the Caldwell wealth, and, if necessary, to make amends for any wrongs that had been done. This decision marked a significant evolution in the family dynamics, with the younger generation, led by Elizabeth and Michael, advocating for a more transparent and ethical approach to managing their inheritance. The mood at Caldwell Estate had shifted significantly in the wake of the family meeting. The air was filled with a sense of purpose as the family members began to grapple with their legacy in a more open and reflective manner. Plans were made to bring in a historian to document the family's business dealings accurately and to establish a foundation that would handle any reparations needed. Amid this new atmosphere of transparency, another unexpected discovery rocked the family. During the organization of Thomas's personal archives by Elizabeth and Michael to aid the historian, they stumbled upon a hidden compartment in his study that contained a will dated several years prior, a will that none of the family knew existed. This document named a completely different set of heirs, primarily charities and employees of the estate, a stark contrast to the current expectations of the family. Shocked by this find, Elizabeth and Michael decided to confront Thomas directly. They found him in his garden, a place where he often retreated for reflection. "Grandfather, we need to understand why you kept this from everyone," Elizabeth began, her voice a mix of confusion and betrayal. Thomas, looking weary but resolute, explained that the old will was created at a time when he felt disillusioned with his family's greed. "I had almost lost faith in all of you. This will was my way of ensuring the estate would continue to do good, even if our family chose not to," he confessed. The revelation of the old will prompted a profound discussion about faith, forgiveness, and the future. Thomas expressed his recent change of heart, influenced by the family's willingness to confront and rectify the darker parts of their legacy. This honest exchange brought the family closer, instilling a newfound respect for Thomas and his complex burdens as the patriarch. The emotional roller coaster continued as the family digested the implications of the old will. While the younger members were initially hurt by the lack of trust it implied, they gradually came to understand Thomas's perspective and his conditional approach to the family inheritance. With these revelations, the family faced a critical decision. They could either continue with the existing competition to win Thomas's favor, or they could honor his original intent by supporting the will that allocated the estate to charitable causes. After much debate, a consensus emerged that reflected a maturation of the family's values. In a final family meeting, it was decided that the competition would end. Instead, the family would establish a trust that balanced both Thomas's desire to benefit charitable causes and the family's involvement in the estate's management. This trust would be overseen by a council made up of family members and external trustees, ensuring that the Caldwell legacy would be preserved and enhanced in a manner that was ethical and inclusive. Thomas, deeply moved by the family's decision, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "You have all shown me that you understand what truly matters," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The meeting ended with a sense of collective relief and a shared vision for the future, marking a new chapter for the Caldwell family. As the family dispersed, the estate seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the shadows of past conflicts giving way to the light of a hopeful dawn. The Caldwells had come to the edge of despair, but had turned back, choosing a path of unity and responsibility. This resolution of the conflict and realignment of the family's goals towards a shared, ethical future signify a hopeful conclusion to a complex saga. The family, once divided by secrets and competition, now stands united, ready to uphold a legacy that would make their ancestors proud. This newfound unity sets the stage for a more collaborative and transparent future, ensuring that the Caldwell legacy is not only preserved but also revered. The final morning at Caldwell Estate dawned clear and bright, a symbolic fresh start for the Caldwell family. As the relatives gathered for breakfast, the atmosphere was noticeably lighter, a stark contrast to the tension that had pervaded the estate just days before. Conversations flowed more freely, filled with plans for the estate's new direction and the roles each family member might play. Thomas, observing from the head of the table, felt a profound sense of relief and pride. The decisions made the previous evening to end the competition and establish a trust had finally aligned the family with the values he had hoped to instill. He saw genuine smiles, heard laughter, and, most importantly, sensed a true camaraderie developing among the once competitive relatives. Today, there were no envelopes, no secretive meetings, just a family coming together, united by a shared commitment to stewardship and philanthropy. Over breakfast, Thomas announced that the day would be devoted to team-building activities and planning sessions, not as tests or challenges, but as genuine efforts to forge stronger bonds and lay a strategic foundation for the future. The last challenge of the gathering was not a test, but an invitation for each family member to propose a personal project or initiative that would contribute to the estate's new mission. This was an opportunity for each relative to showcase their passions and how they aligned with the estate's goals, encouraging creativity and individual contribution. Elizabeth proposed developing a legal clinic on the estate grounds to offer free legal services to the community, leveraging her background as a lawyer to give back. Michael suggested an expansion of the estate's agricultural operations to include more organic produce, aiming to supply local restaurants and markets. As each family member presented their ideas, it became clear that the estate was about to become a vibrant hub of diverse yet interconnected projects, each reflecting a different facet of the Caldwell legacy. Thomas listened intently, offering guidance and encouragement, genuinely impressed by the innovative and thoughtful proposals that aligned closely with the values he cherished. The session not only provided a platform for each family member to take on a meaningful role, but also helped to redefine the estate as a place of community and innovation, rather than merely a symbol of wealth. As the day progressed, the family's collaborative spirit continued to build momentum. Each member's proposal was met with enthusiasm and constructive feedback, and by afternoon the estate buzzed with the energy of new beginnings. However, amidst this harmony, one final confrontation loomed, the moment when Thomas would officially reveal his chosen successor. After lunch, the family gathered in the Great Hall, the very heart of Caldwell Estate, where portraits of ancestors lined the walls, watching over the proceedings with silent gravitas. Thomas stood before his family, the old will and the new trust documents spread out on a table beside him, representing both the past and the future of the Caldwell legacy. "This family has come a long way in just a few short days," Thomas began, his voice resonant with emotion. You have all shown remarkable growth, resilience, and a willingness to face difficult truths. For that, I am incredibly proud." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. However, the responsibility of leading this family and this estate into the future is not one that can be taken lightly. It requires vision, integrity, and above all, a commitment to something greater than oneself. With a deep breath, Thomas reached for the documents. As of today, the old will is officially void. The estate will be governed by the trust we've agreed upon, with each of you playing a vital role in its success. But the role of primary trustee, the one who will oversee the implementation of our shared vision, falls to Elizabeth. The room was silent for a moment as Thomas's words settled. Elizabeth, though she had expected to shoulder a significant responsibility, was visibly moved by her grandfather's trust. The family, too, appeared to accept this decision, recognizing Elizabeth's leadership throughout the past days. Thomas stepped forward and placed his hand on Elizabeth's shoulder. "You have proven to be a true leader, not just in how you handled the challenges, but in how you brought this family together. I trust you to guide us all forward." As the family processed the announcement, the initial shock quickly gave way to a sense of acceptance and support. Elizabeth, though surprised by the weight of the responsibility, gracefully accepted the role, her mind already racing with plans to ensure the estate flourished under its new governance structure. Michael was the first to step forward, extending his hand to Elizabeth. "You've earned this, Elizabeth. I'm ready to support you in any way I can." His words were genuine, reflecting the maturity and respect that had developed over the course of their shared experiences. One by one, the other family members followed suit, offering their congratulations and pledging their support. Even Peter, who had earlier been embroiled in controversy, acknowledged Elizabeth's rightful place at the helm with a nod of respect, understanding that the future of the Caldwell estate depended on their unity. Thomas watched with pride as his family rallied around Elizabeth, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. The trust, now led by Elizabeth, would ensure that the estate's wealth was used not just for the benefit of the Caldwell name, but for the broader community and causes that aligned with the family's evolving values. That evening, as the family gathered for a celebratory dinner, the atmosphere was markedly different from the tense gatherings of previous nights. The estate, once a battleground for ambition and greed, had become a place of reconciliation and forward-thinking collaboration. Elizabeth took a moment to address the family. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We have the opportunity to create something truly remarkable here, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. I'm honored to lead this effort, and I know that with all of you by my side, we can achieve great things." The dinner concluded with a toast to the future, each family member feeling a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. The Caldwell legacy, once teetering on the edge of disarray, now stood on the cusp of a new era, one defined by unity, integrity, and a shared commitment to making a positive impact on the world. As the celebratory dinner wound down and the family dispersed for the night, Elizabeth remained in the dining hall, reflecting on the monumental task that lay ahead. The weight of her new role as the primary trustee of the Caldwell estate settled heavily on her shoulders. The trust was not just a financial responsibility, it was a moral one, guiding the legacy of her family into a future that was yet to be written. Thomas approached her quietly, sensing her contemplative mood. "You've done well, Elizabeth," he said softly, sitting beside her, "but I know this is a heavy burden to carry." Elizabeth nodded, her thoughts still racing. "I want to do right by this family and by the community, grandfather. But there's so much to consider, so much that could go wrong." Thomas smiled, his expression one of understanding and pride. "That's why I chose you. You're not just thinking about the legacy in terms of money or power. You're thinking about the impact, the people, and the future. That's what makes you the right person for this role." They sat in silence for a moment, the enormity of the decision hanging in the air. Elizabeth finally spoke, her voice filled with determination. "I won't let you down. I'll ensure that our legacy is one of integrity and positive influence." Thomas nodded. "I have no doubt you will. And remember, you're not alone in this. You have the support of the family and the community. Lean on them when you need to. Leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about guiding others to work together towards a common goal." With those words, Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of purpose. The decision to lead the trust was not just about honoring the past, but about building a future that everyone could be proud of. The weight of responsibility didn't feel so heavy anymore. It felt like an opportunity to create lasting change. The following day, Elizabeth gathered the family once more, this time in the estate's grand ballroom, a space that had seen countless celebrations and pivotal moments in the Caldwell history. This meeting, however, was different. It was not just about discussing plans, but about securing the legacy they had all worked so hard to redefine. Elizabeth stood before her family, confident and composed. "Today marks the beginning of our new journey as a family and as stewards of the Caldwell estate. We've all seen how quickly things can unravel when we let ambition and secrecy drive our actions. But we've also seen what we can achieve when we work together, openly and with integrity." She outlined the structure of the trust, emphasizing that it would be managed collaboratively, with decisions made collectively by a council that included family members, community representatives, and independent advisors. This structure ensured that the estate's resources would be used wisely and that the Caldwell legacy would be one of positive impact rather than personal gain. The family listened intently, nodding in agreement as Elizabeth spoke. Even those who had initially been wary of the changes seemed to recognize the wisdom in her approach. The trust would fund various initiatives, from community development projects to educational scholarships, ensuring that the estate's wealth benefited a broader swath of society. As Elizabeth concluded, she invited each family member to share their thoughts and ideas on how they could contribute to the estate's new direction. The discussion was lively, filled with creative suggestions and genuine enthusiasm. For the first time in a long while, the Caldwells felt like a true family, united in purpose and committed to a common goal. Thomas, watching from the sidelines, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His family had come together in a way he hadn't thought possible, transforming a potential disaster into a new beginning. The Caldwell legacy was no longer just about preserving wealth. It was about making a difference. As the meeting came to a close, the family agreed to meet regularly, not just to oversee the trust, but to stay connected and ensure that the values they had embraced remained at the core of their actions. The Caldwell estate, once a symbol of division, was now a beacon of unity and shared purpose. In the days following the establishment of the trust and the family's renewed commitment to their shared legacy, the Caldwell estate seemed to take on a new life. The grounds, once steeped in the tension of competition and secrecy, now buzzed with the energy of collaboration and purpose. Elizabeth, now fully embracing her role as the primary trustee, took time each day to walk the estate, reflecting on the journey that had brought her and her family to this point. One morning, as she wandered through the rose garden, Elizabeth was joined by Laura. The youngest of the Caldwell cousins had grown significantly over the past few days, shedding her initial insecurities and finding her voice within the family. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the scent of roses filling the air, before Laura finally spoke. "It's hard to believe how much has changed in such a short time," Laura said, her voice thoughtful. "I used to feel so disconnected from everything here, like I didn't really belong. But now I feel like I'm part of something bigger, something important." Elizabeth nodded, understanding exactly what Laura meant. This estate, this family, it's more than just a place or a name. It's a legacy we're all responsible for, and it's up to us to shape it in a way that matters. I'm glad you feel that connection now, Laura. We all have a role to play, and your voice is just as important as anyone else's. Laura smiled, her confidence growing with each step. I want to help with the educational initiatives we discussed. I think we could do a lot of good by providing scholarships and mentorship to young people in the community. It's something I'm passionate about. Elizabeth smiled, proud of the younger woman's newfound sense of purpose. That's exactly the kind of project this estate needs, something that not only honors our family, but also gives back in a meaningful way. I think you'll do an amazing job with it, Laura. Their conversation continued as they walked, discussing ideas and dreams for the future of the estate. Elizabeth felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that the Caldwell legacy would be in good hands long after she had passed the torch to the next generation. As the weeks turned into months, the changes within the Caldwell estate became evident to everyone involved. The once closed-off world of the Caldwells began to open up, embracing the surrounding community in ways that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier. The legal clinic that Elizabeth had proposed was established in one of the estate's historic buildings, offering pro bono services to those in need. It quickly became a cornerstone of the community, with Elizabeth personally overseeing its operations alongside a dedicated team of lawyers and volunteers. Michael's vision for expanding the estate's agricultural operations took root as well, with new organic gardens sprouting up on the once neglected fields. The produce from these gardens was sold at local markets, with proceeds going back into the community and to fund further developments on the estate. Michael's hands-on approach earned him the respect of the local farmers and business owners, solidifying the Caldwell name as one synonymous with sustainability and progress. Susan's sustainability initiatives, including the solar panels she had championed, were implemented across the estate. The Caldwell estate not only reduced its carbon footprint, but also became a model of environmental stewardship, inspiring other landowners in the region to adopt similar practices. The educational initiatives spearheaded by Laura began to take shape as well. Scholarships were awarded to local students, and mentorship programs were established, connecting the younger generation with experienced professionals who could guide them toward their goals. The Caldwell family, once seen as distant and elite, became known for their dedication to uplifting those around them. Even the estate's social calendar saw a transformation. The grand ballroom, once reserved for exclusive family events, was now regularly open to the public for community gatherings, fundraisers, and cultural events. The estate became a vibrant hub of activity, a place where the Caldwell legacy was not just preserved, but actively celebrated and shared with others. Thomas, now content to take a back seat, watched with pride as his family carried the Caldwell name into a new era. He spent his days enjoying the estate, knowing that his life's work would continue through the efforts of those he loved most. The once heavy burden of responsibility had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and fulfillment. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to our channel and supporting us through the thanks button.